Welcome to Pioneer Mindset, a place where we challenge our mindset and address the discomfort in both business and life by finding clarity resulting in bold conviction. I'm your host, Garrett Ruskamp, fifth generation farmer, husband, and father from rural Nebraska. Whether you're navigating frustration from past decisions or worry about the uncertainty you face today in your business, we're going to learn from our struggles and take on new challenges with a resilient mindset. Join me as I share my journey of struggles I've faced in agriculture as a farmer and family man. I'm ready to dive into honest conversations to tackle the mindsets surrounding key issues that rural ag business owners face that will ultimately help you gain control, leading to a profitable and sustainable business. Let's adapt to Pioneer Mindset and get to it. Welcome back, everyone. For today's episode, I want to kind of piggyback off of the last episode where we kind of talk about how we make some of our different decisions in our cropping decisions or just financing decisions in general. And I want to talk to you about the software program that I've been using for about 3 years now. And I'm really excited to kind of share this software to you guys. But honestly, as I talk about this, you're probably thinking, well, this is not necessarily a time of year to be talking about a computer program or a software program where I can be dealing with my finances. Because let's face it, we're just out in the day-to-day trying to survive, trying to get everything taken care of with the crop, trying to take care of the cattle, the livestock, whatever it is. I'm sure if you're like me right now, we're pretty busy outside. Probably not necessarily the time to be focusing on some of these different financial things, but that doesn't mean that we can't focus on maybe learning more about them or maybe learning how these different things and tools can help us in the future. And so typically it's kind of the time of year we have a lot of tractor time. So I feel like that's where this would be a good episode to listen to, maybe listen to a couple times as we talk about some of these different tools that are out there that we can utilize. So like I've mentioned before, this program, I've used this for 3 years and it's called Farmer Metrics. It's a very good program, and I'm going to try to do the best I can to explain it because, as we know, typically, unless you can get your hands on it, unless you can see a video of it, unless you can actually have, like, say, a free trial of it and to figure out whether it's going to actually work for you or whether it's going to be hard to implement, it's going to be hard to get a grasp on what this actually consists of. So I'm going to do the best I can to explain it, but this has kind of come up in a few of my conversations lately. And basically asking about this program. How can it work for me? How does it relate to my current record-keeping system? Well, I want to kind of dive into all of those things today as I talk about this and talk about how it can work for you and how it's worked for me in the past. So before I kind of talk about the program specifically and all the details, ins and outs of that program, I first want to ask you, what are you currently using for a record-keeping system? Are you using, like QuickBooks Online? Are you using Excel spreadsheets? Are you using a notebook that just kind of sits on the counter? Just kind of think about what are you currently using and think about how that has served your operation. Has that done everything you need it to? Have you been able to, say, go to the bank if you need a line of credit or maybe need to get some money to do an expansion or buy some more cows, buy a piece of equipment? How has your current record-keeping system served your operation whenever you've needed it? Whenever you've need to fall back onto it. And I'd say most cases for farmers and ranchers, and I was the same way, we've got some sort of record-keeping system. We always have something, whether it's spreadsheets. I'm still a big spreadsheet person, but I've always been. I use spreadsheets a lot, mostly when it came to just kind of keeping track of my income and expenses. Let's be honest, that's just usually all we try to keep track of is our income and expenses, enough to give to the accountant at the end of the year and keep us out of trouble. I mean, that's kind of all this really comes down to. But let's be honest, if we're running a business, we need to be more proactive than that. We need to really stay on top of our numbers. So that way, ultimately, when there comes opportunities in the future, we can capitalize on those. We can go buy that piece of ground, go buy that 40 head of cows that's coming up for sale because we've got a pasture that could potentially be rented to us. So we need to stay on top of our numbers so we can maybe capitalize on some of those things. But so the next thing I want to ask you is, you're thinking about what you're currently using for records. You're thinking about what you're doing. Try to think about, how that's served you. Now think back to when was the last time, you were in your banker's office and you were trying to give them updated numbers and it was the beginning of the year. 6 months ago, that's a long time ago, but just kind of think back that time when you're doing your line of credit renewal and you're trying to basically get your banker updated financials. What was that situation like? Now, I can tell you kind of what ours was used to be like before we had this system to kind of help us stay on top of things. Even though you've got, say, like QuickBooks Online, or maybe you've got some sort of accounting system, that definitely helps. That definitely gives you a leg up. But at the end of the day, when it comes to, say, keeping track of, say, like your assets and your liabilities, those are the, big numbers that the bank's going to be after, so they can kind of get your net worth or kind of figure out what their position is with you. When it comes to getting those numbers, a lot of times we'd go in and we'd maybe meet prior to when we actually need our line of credit renewed. Hopefully, we meet prior to when we actually need it. But they would hand us maybe an old balance sheet, and they would hand us and say, hey, just go on there and scribble on, cross off what's changed, scribble on what's updated numbers, maybe your grain inventory, how many bushels of corn you got in the bin, how many bushels of beans, how many bales of alfalfa, wheat straw, whatever it is. Same for the livestock side. How many cows, how many pairs, how many bulls. If you're feeding cattle, how many pens of cattle, how many head. They need to know all those numbers so they can, in return, basically take all that and put it into their system, and they're going to put their values on that so they can kind of basically figure out what their position is with you. And it's kind of the same thing if you were trying to do it. You need to figure out what your position is with them. That's ultimately what it comes down to when they're trying to do a renewal or a line of credit, is they want to know what is their position. Are they getting underwater? Have you had some negative years in the past where your net worth has gone down? And maybe you've lost some livestock. You've had a bad loss. And so they need to know what that is. And so that's why was always very stressful, because you take they give you the spreadsheet, or the balance sheet, I should say, and you'd put that information on there. Hopefully you'd have some sort of record keeping on your end to easily get that information, to easily be able to, provide them with that information. In most cases, some people don't. But, that's kind of a whole nother topic there. But to get them the information was like, well, I'll just scribble this on and hand it back, and then they take it and they do what they want with it. And at the end of the day, okay, they take it, they input it into their system, and then you come back maybe a couple weeks later, maybe a month later, hopefully not too long. Hopefully you get your line of credit renewed before you actually need it, and they can be timely. That's a whole nother topic there, as if we get to talking about bankers. But the one thing there is basically you reconvene. Okay, they say, I've got your line of credit renewed. You get that whole process going, and you sit down like, well, let's go through this. Let's sign our papers. Let's take a look at this balance sheet to kind of see what you did over the last year. And that's honestly how most people gauge how they did in the last year. You sit down in your banker's office once a year, and whatever time of year that is, hopefully not a busy time, and you can just sit down and you look at your balance sheet and you said, well, this is what you did last year. This is the income you had. This is your cash on hand. This is your working capital. This is your debt to asset ratio. And then this is, your total net worth. And it grew by this much, or maybe it stayed flat. Maybe you had a negative year. And then you're sitting in that seat and thinking your net worth literally went down. Your working capital went down. And you're just sitting there thinking, wow, what did we do? What went wrong? And you're just sitting there, you're almost getting warm, you're getting uncomfortable, because it's not a very fun place to be in when you're talking to your banker. They said, yeah, we'll approve you for this line of credit, but man, your net worth went down a little bit. We need to keep an eye on that. And then you sign your life away, and then you walk out the door and you're gone for another 6 to 12 months. Does that sound normal? I mean, that's kind of how it was for us. So the thing I want you to know about that is, that might be normal for farmers and ranchers and some ag business owners. But I think in the business world, that should not be normal. And that's why I want to focus on some of this. That's why I think this software program I'm going to tell you about is going to be hugely beneficial. And it's been beneficial to us. And that's why I can say that. Because now what this allows us to do, this software, simply put, we can keep track of our assets and our liabilities. We can go through and update as often as we can. Usually once a month is sufficient, because times are changing. Usually what we try to do, and I'll kind of tell you the process here, is, my wife, Ellen, is kind of the bookkeeper. She does all our QuickBooks Online. She keeps track of all that stuff. So whatever time of month, usually right after the first week in the month, she's trying to go in, take all the, the bills, just trying to enter those in and trying to update all that stuff from the QuickBooks side of things. And then she'll take that information, and then we can then go in and update our balance sheet side of things. And then she's also entering in all that information, the cash flow, once she gets, goes on the QuickBooks Online. That's what we use, whatever you're using to kind of figure out your cash flow. And I'll get into the cash flow a little bit later. I'll pause on that for a second, but back to like the balance sheet side of things, because that's what we were talking about. So you've got the assets and the liabilities position. You kind of enter in, okay, my inventory changed this much because I sold my calves off, and I fed a bunch of my hay up, so I'm down on my hay, and I'm getting ready to sell grain. So I moved 5,000 bushels and I got 20,000 left, so I can keep track of that. But then also in return, we've got our current line of credit. Because we sold the grain, because we sold the calves, we decreased that line of credit. We paid down on that. Some money went back to the line of credit, so that can kind of change on the liability portion. Or maybe you had some term debt payments that you made in the month of April. Whatever that looks like, it's good to really keep track of that, because as we all know, that's changing. That's changing so often. So rather than just going into your banker's office once a year and this is what our net worth is, this is what my assets and your liabilities are, let's look at it, take the paper home, shove it in a drawer, set it on top of the dash of the pickup, wherever it is, forget about it and not look at it until the next year when we actually need something. Or maybe throughout the year if an opportunity pops up. Then that's the next thing I want to talk about is, okay, let's say you have an opportunity pop up. Let's say you can buy 40 head of cows because you got a pasture that you can rent. Okay, well, 40 head of cows these days with this cattle market is not chump change. Let's be honest. That's a pretty good chunk of change, and in most cases, you might have to go take out a loan for that, or at least part of it. So you're going to go to the bank and you're going to say, hey, I want to buy these cows. I got this pasture I want to rent, and I can pick this up. And, cattle market's hot. I think this is a good idea. I can pay back these cows, and it'll be good. It'll be no problem. And so they'll say, okay, well, let's just get an updated number so that way I can take this to, maybe it's big enough to where I got to take it to loan committee because bankers got to do that to get everything approved. And so they might say, okay, let's get your updated numbers. So then you go back and say, okay, oh man, what are my updated numbers? And so then, okay, you give them your updated numbers. You said, okay, I think we can do this. And really, you go into that just hoping and praying that for this opportunity that comes up, a pasture that you can maybe release. And so that doesn't come up very often. So you're excited. I want to go buy some more cows. Market looks good. This is super exciting. Let's go figure this out. Let's go ask our banker what we can do. Wow. There's a lot of power in that statement right there, is let's go ask our banker what we can do. And that's the big thing I want to hit home on here is we sit in our banker's office asking, waiting, praying, hoping they'll tell us what we want to hear, and we'll get to go do what we want to do. When the reality is this program here, you could take and you could update all your assets and your liabilities throughout the year, every month, like I mentioned, so that way as things change, maybe things are going really good. And you can easily say in there, okay, I'm going to punch in a potential 40 head of cows. And I'm going to put a little bit of a down payment down. This is what my loan looks like. This is what roughly current interest rates look like. So I'm going to add that to my liabilities. And this is what it's going to change, my overall position with the bank. It's my overall net worth. And you're going to know exactly how that's going to play out in your situation and how that's going to affect your farm. And you're going to be able to know that before you take it to the banker. That way you're not just saying, hey, can I do this? What are your thoughts? Yes, you can still ask him. Yes, he'll still have to approve the loan. But the reality is you shouldn't have to just ask for permission. You should say, here, this is what I've laid out. This is why I want to do it. This is the facts. This is what makes sense. I'm going to be able to put this into my cash flow, and I'll get into that later, but put this into a cash flow. I'm going to make it work. I've got a little bit for down payment. This is what the loan looks like. This is how it's going to affect me. Let's go get it approved. I mean, that's honestly, how much power do you think that would give you if you walked into your banker's office and just, he had all the information. He had all that. And that's the other thing here is I want to mention here real quick about this software is you can easily share this, whether it be through a PDF, through an Excel spreadsheet. You can actually download all this information, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and send it to him. Send it to him once a month. Maybe you sent it to him last month and you want to do something this month. He's already got your updated numbers. He's going to look at it and you say, yep, you're good. I think let's get this approved. No problem. Man, what would that feel like to you? What would that be worth to you? To be able to walk in your banker's office and be like, hey, I want to do this. I've got my numbers. I've got it all put together. Let's go. Man, that's a lot of power that comes into that. And I can say that because we've been there. We've been there since we've been able to use this, and it's been hard to put a price on this because it's helped us to get to the position that we're in today. And it's going to help you realize, as things change in the operation, as things change throughout the year, what do things actually look like for our position with the bank, our overall, operation position. And then let's just kind of jump into the cash flow side of things as well. We're going to stick with the same scenario, talking about buying cows. Okay, you're going to lease the pasture. That's going to take some rent. You're going to maybe have to buy some feed. There's going to be some other expenses that come along with that. We're going to be able to maybe take your current cash flow. The cash flow side of things within this Farmer Metrics basically is a way to predict or to enter in your projected and your actual cash flow income and expenses throughout the entire year on a month-by-month basis, so we can keep all those months separate. And so you're going to be able to predict, okay, I'm going to rent this pasture, and in April, I'm going to have to make my cash lease payment. But then I bought my cows back in February, so I got to enter in maybe when my feed expenses started and all of that stuff throughout the year. And I'm going to, a year from now, once I bought the cows, that's when I'm going to start making my term payments on that loan to pay off those cows. So you're going to be able to enter that in, and you're going to figure out, okay, I've got 40 head of cows. Maybe I'm going to estimate on the conservative side, I'm going to lose a calf. So I'm going to have 39 calves to sell at this amount of weight at this roughly date. You're going to be able to predict that income coming in, maybe around November, December timeframe, whatever that looks like. And so you're going to be able to predict that stuff out and know, okay, this cash flow looks pretty good, or maybe it's a little bit tight, but it's okay. I've got my other cows that are paid for to offset some of that expense. Now, I'm talking about cows here. This could go for equipment. This could go for if you're trying to maybe buy a new planter. You got through planting season, but it was rough. You need a new planter, need something bigger to cover more acres. So maybe you need to go into the bank and figure out whether basically get a loan to buy this new planter. Maybe if equipment prices are coming down, so you're planning ahead for December or in the fall when some of those things are readily available on different auctions. You're planning ahead, taking this to the banker, say, hey, I'm going to buy a planter this year. This is what my numbers look like. I'm going to go do it. Are you on board? Are you going to give me the loan, or am I going to have to go elsewhere? Let's talk about that, because that can be a lot of power. If you literally walk into your bank, instead of praying for the loan, instead of praying he'll say yes with whatever you want to do, you walk in there and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you do it, or do I need to go elsewhere? Because that is the power that can come from by knowing your numbers, finding clarity, and that's really what this comes down to, is the software program that, by the way, is easy to use. It's online. You can access it anywhere, any computer. You can pull it up frequently, multiple users. And there's much more to it than even just the balance sheet and the cash flow side of things. There's other tools in there as well that I'm not even going to dive into, because it can be overwhelming. And honestly, I hope this kind of makes sense to you. And I am trying to sell this a little bit because it's been a benefit to me. It's been a benefit to our operation. So I think it's important that other people try to get their hands on it as well. So, but if it's not this, I do want to mention, even if you don't try to get this exact program, just find something that works for you. Find something to stay on top of your numbers so you can keep track of all this information, so that way you can still have the power inside the conversation with your banker, with whatever you're trying to do to move your operation in the right direction. And I think there's a lot of power, a lot of confidence in there, and definitely kills a lot of scarcity when you know all that information. And I've mentioned this before, but clarity kills scarcity. So I think this is something that can be focused on, and I think this can be something that can help you get results as well when it comes to some of these different things that I've mentioned. I hope you found value in this. If you want to learn more about Farmer Metrics or how this could serve you in your operation, definitely hit me up. Follow me on my Instagram, social media, Facebook, and I'd love to have a conversation about this. But the important thing here is that I want you to know that there are definitely tools out there that can make your life better. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. It's done well for us, and I think it can do well for you. So I hope you found value in this, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for tagging along with me today as we sharpened our mindsets. If you've gained insight from today's episode, be sure to take a screenshot to share or send this episode to somebody who might also find value in it. For more, follow me on Instagram at Garrett Ruskamp or on Facebook, and join me next time for more Conviction Through Clarity.